Imagine, just for a second, that you are standing at 11,000 feet.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's high up.
Right. The air up there is so thin it feels, I don't know, brittle inside your lungs.
Yeah.
Like it might literally crack if you take too deep of a breath.
Absolutely.
And it is dead silent. But I don't mean, the quiet of a library. It's the silence of a vacuum.
Just nothingness.
Exactly. The only sound is the wind hissing through the pine needles. You look around and it's just white. Endless, indifferent white.
It's beautiful, but
But it's terrifying. Because, deep down in your lizard brain, this landscape absolutely does not care if you live or die.
that is the primal fear of the wilderness, isn't it? The sublime indifference of nature. It's a place where your bank account, your job title, your social status, and none of it matters.
None of it.
The cold is the great equalizer. I mean, it will kill a billionaire just as fast as it kills a bigger.
Oh, completely. And that stripped down, raw setting is the backdrop for the material we are unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into the book Warning Signs by Tracy Sierra.
Such an incredible piece of work.
It really is. And let me tell you, this book creates an atmosphere that is so cold, I actually had to go put on a heavy sweater while reading it in my living room.
I believe it.
It's a survival thriller on the surface, yes, but it morphs into this intense psychological nightmare that had me questioning every single shadow in my own house.
It's a fascinating text because it blends two very distinct types of horror, which is, honestly, it's really hard to pull off.
Right.
You have the external physical threat, the avalanches, the freezing temperatures, the sheer isolation of the Colorado backcountry. But then you have this internal domestic horror.
The threat of a parent who isn't who they say they are.
Exactly. It's essentially The Shining meets into thin air.
Oh, I love that. That is a perfect comparison. The Shining for the claustrophobic family dynamic, and Into Thin Air for the sheer brutality of the elements.
Yeah.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to unpack how the story uses that physical danger. And we're going to get technical with the mechanics of an avalanche later on.
Oh, absolutely. The physics of it are terrifying.
We want to see how that physical danger mirrors the psychological danger of a toxic, controlling parent.
And we are going to look closely at the concept of intuition versus paranoia, which is just a huge theme here.
A massive theme.
And we have to talk about the monster, because there is a monster in this narrative.
Or is there? I mean, that's the central mystery we have to untangle for you. Is it a beast? Is it a ghost? Or is it a man?
The author keeps us guessing on that front right up until the very end.
She really does. But before we get to the scares, let's just set the scene for you. The entire story revolves around a trip to a place called the Pantheon Hut.
Right, the Pantheon Hut. It's a backcountry lodge situated at about 11,000 feet.
Accessible only by skiing or snowshoeing, right?
Exactly. No roads, no cell service, just you and the snow.
And for those listening who haven't done backcountry trips, let's be clear. This is not a cozy chalet with room service and a hot tub.
No, not at all.
It's rustic. You pack in whatever you need. You are entirely off the grid.
And the isolation is key here. I mean, in literature, the locked room mystery is a staple, think Agatha Christie. But here the room is an entire mountain range.
Wow, yeah.
You can leave the hut, technically, but you can't leave the danger. The snow creates a barrier that's as effective as any prison wall. If you walk out the door without skis and without knowledge, you just die.
It's a frozen prison, and the cast of characters trapped in this snow globe is, well, it's a powder keg waiting for a match.
Definitely.
Our protagonist is Zach. He is 12 years old. And let's establish right away, he is not your average 12-year-old playing video games and worrying about middle school drama.
Not at all. Zach is incredibly hypervigilant. He's anxious. He is actively grieving. His mother, Grace, died recently in a house fire, and her presence, or rather her absence, it haunts every single page.
It really feels like Grace is almost an active character in the narrative, even though she's gone.
She essentially is. She's the internal voice guiding Zach. She was former mountain rescue, a very capable, highly trained woman.
Which is such a sharp contrast to what we see from the other adults.
Exactly. And Zach is a heartbreaking example of a child who has had to grow up way too fast. He's absorbed all of his mother's survival lessons, not just as an interesting hobby, but as a literal defense mechanism.
He's constantly scanning his environment.
Constantly. Scanning for threats, whether it's unstable snow outside or his father's temper inside.
Which brings us to the father, Bram Fisher. We have to talk about Bram.
Bram.
On the surface, charismatic, handsome, ostensibly wealthy, he has organized this trip for a group of investors and associates.
Right, it's billed as a father-son bonding trip.
Yeah, a father-son trip, but Zach knows the truth immediately.
Because it's a performance. Everything with Bram is a performance.
Yeah.
He is trying to secure funding for his business, which is, let's just say, failing. Desperately failing.
Bram is like the sun around which everyone else is forced to orbit. If he's warm, you're safe. If he's cold, you freeze.
That's a great way to put it.
And the other men on the trip, Dave, his son Russ, the wealthy investor Arlo's son Shane, and Bram's associate Pike, they're all just props in Bram's play.
Props to make him look like a successful, rugged outdoorsman. And there is this palpable tension right from the jump. Zach knows something is fundamentally wrong. He feels it in his gut.
Which brings us to our first major section of the deep dive, the warnings. Because the book isn't called Warning Signs for nothing.
No, it's remarkably literal in that sense. The author lays out these red flags immediately, both in the physical environment and in the psychological family dynamic. It's about noticing the cracks in the ice before you actually fall through.
I want to pause on this concept of the underself for a second.
Oh, the underself.
Because on the surface, if you just hear the summary, it sounds like a kid just dealing with a dad who has a bad temper. Is it really that distinct, or is Zach just being a sensitive kid projecting things?
That's a completely valid question, and it's one the text dares you to ask early on. We, as a society, often dismiss kids' perceptions as dramatic or overblown.
Right.
But the narrative gives us physical cues that this isn't just a standard mood swing. Zach has this toy, a reversible octopus.
I've seen those.
Yeah.
They were huge on social media a few years ago. You flip it inside out.
Yes, exactly. You flip it one way, it's pink and smiling. You flip it inside out, it's green and frowning. And Zach uses this to explain his father's personality shifts. He calls the angry, dark side the underself.
It's a brilliant metaphor for a child's perspective of an abuser.
It really is. It helps Zach compartmentalize the trauma. Because if the underself is a separate entity, a separate thing, maybe his real dad, the pink octopus, still loves him.
That is so sad. But notice the sensory detail Zach attaches to this shift. The smell. That detail really stuck with me.
Yes. Zach mentions a specific chemical smell that accompanies the underself emerging. Lighter fluid, an accelerant.
Now wait, is that literal lighter fluid? Like he actually smells it on his dad? Or is that a psychological memory of the fire that killed his mom?
It's purposely ambiguous at first. It could absolutely be a PTSD flashback, a visceral sensory trigger tying his fear of his father to the trauma of the fire.
But psychologically, what does it mean?
Psychologically, the underself represents what experts call the abusive personality. It's not that Bram loses control in a fit of rage, it's that he intentionally switches masks.
So it's a calculated move. The anger isn't an accident.
Precisely. The author cites Lundy Bancroft in the acknowledgments, and Bancroft argues that the abusive outburst is actually a tool used to regain control. The underself comes out exactly when Bram feels his authority slipping.
It's not about losing his temper. It's about deploying fear to get what he wants.
Yes.
That's terrifying. It makes the dad significantly scarier than the actual wilderness outside. But speaking of the wilderness, let's talk about the dead elk.
Oh, that scene is chilling.
It gave me the creeps. Zach and Bram are skiing up the trail to the hut, and they find this elk carcass. But it is not normal.
It's completely uncanny. The description is so specific and almost forensic. The elk has been stripped to the bone from the shoulders up. But the cuts are surgically clean.
Surgically clean. And no blood.
No blood. And the spine is laid out in a perfect, deliberate arc.
A perfect arc. Nature doesn't do perfect arcs. Nature is messy. Coyotes tear things apart randomly. Bears smash things. This looked like art. Or a trophy.
Exactly. It implies intent. It implies an intelligence behind the violence that goes beyond instinct. And Zach's reaction is pure, unfiltered terror. He senses a predator nearby. He feels that primitive hair on the back of your neck, I am being watched sensation.
But then look at Bram's reaction. This is such a crucial character beat.
Huh?
Bram sees dollar signs.
He does.
He literally wants to cut off the antlers and sell them. He says something to Zach like, it's eat or be eaten.
That is Bram's entire worldview encapsulated in one sentence. He encounters a scene of horrific, completely unexplained violence, and his very first instinct is monetization and dominance.
He refuses to acknowledge the strangeness of it.
Because acknowledging it would require admitting there is something out there in the woods that he doesn't understand and cannot control. So he projects his own brutal, transactional nature onto the environment.
And then, to make matters even worse, Zach and Russ, the other teenager on the trip, they find tracks later on. Clawed tracks.
Yeah.
But they look human.
Yes, elongated, human-like hands, but equipped with claws. Then far too large. This really fuels the monster theory of the book. Is it a yeti? Is it a bear? Or something entirely worse?
But again, the adults just dismiss it.
Completely brush it off.
And this dynamic, the arrogant dismissal of legitimate danger, that is the core conflict driving the entire first act. We see this play out vividly with the guide, Steve.
Of course.
Honestly. He's the only voice of reason.
Yeah.
He's the trained expert. But Bram thinks he knows better than the actual mountain.
It's classic textbook narcissism. Bram views Steve's expertise not as a resource, but as a direct challenge to his own authority. When Steve says, the snow is unstable, we should take the safer route through the trees.
Bram just hears, I am telling you what to do.
Exactly. And his fragile ego simply cannot handle that. He needs to impress these wealthy investors with first tracks. He needs to be the alpha leader who conquered the mountain.
First tracks. That obsession with being the absolute first one to carve up the pristine, untouched snow, it's such a masculine, conquering metaphor, and it leads him directly into disaster.
Right.
You mentioned that obsession with conquer the mountain, that need to make a mark. It seems like that ego isn't just a character flaw, it's actually a massive safety hazard. Because when you are looking at the mountain as something to be beaten, you stop looking at the red flags.
You stop seeing the terrain and you start seeing a trophy. And that blindness is exactly what leads the group up Mount Moriah directly into the path of the slide.
Let's get into the avalanche. The text describes it as a slab release. Now, I think for a lot of us who aren't skiers, we picture an avalanche like loose powder tumbling down a hill, kind of like sugar sliding off a spoon. But that's not what happens here, is it?
No, and that is a critical distinction to make. A loose snow avalanche, what you just described, is relatively manageable. It kind of flows around you. What Sierra describes, and what actually kills the majority of backcountry skiers in real life, is a slab avalanche.
Okay, so how does that work?
You have to imagine the snowpack on the mountain like a layer cake.
Layers, got it.
So you have a cohesive, solid slab of snow sitting on top. That's the cake. Hard, wind-packed snow. But underneath that, hidden from view, you have a persistent, weak layer.
What makes it weak?
It could be hoarfrost, or maybe faceted snow crystals that essentially act like millions of tiny ball bearings. It's unstable.
So the top layer is heavy and rigid, and the bottom layer is slippery.
Exactly. And Steve, the guide, actually tries to warn them. He does a physical test in the snow. He digs a pit and isolates a column of snow.
Oh, right, the triangular shape test.
Yes. He cuts a triangular shape to test the sheer strength of the layers. And it fails easily, indicating high avalanche danger. But Bram dismisses it. So when Bram and the men ski out onto that steep bowl, their added weight is the trigger.
It's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
It collapses that weak layer underneath. And the terrifying thing isn't just a localized tumble, it's the propagation.
Propagation.
The fracture spreads instantly. You hear a whomp sound. It's a very distinctive, deeply terrifying acoustic sound of the air collapsing out of the snowpack. And suddenly, the entire mountain face, acres and acres of snow, shatters like a massive pane of glass all at once.
That is horrifying, the idea of the ground itself just shattering beneath you.
Tracy Sierra describes it almost like the ocean, a solid wave of white concrete moving at 80 miles an hour. And there are actually two slides, a smaller initial one that knocks them off balance, and then a massive second slide that just overtakes everything in its path.
And Zach, this 12-year-old kid, is the only one who reacts correctly in that moment of pure chaos. And why? Because of his mother.
Grace. Her rigorous training is what saves his life. While the adult men are panicking or just caught completely off guard by their own arrogance, Zach relies on muscle memory. He remembers the lesson.
Hug a tree.
Hug a tree to anchor yourself. Deploy the avalanche airbag. Fight to create an air pocket in front of your face before the snow sets like cement.
Let's talk about the airbag for a second. How does pulling a cord on a backpack actually help you in an avalanche? It's not a life jacket, right? You don't just magically float to the top of the snow.
Right. It's not about buoyancy. It's about physics. It relies on a principle called inverse segregation.
Okay, science time. What is that?
Sometimes it's casually called the Brazil nut effect. If you have a shaken container of mixed nuts, the biggest ones, the Brazil nuts, always end up at the top.
Oh, yeah, they do.
In a moving granular flow, like an avalanche, larger particles are pushed toward the surface while smaller particles fall into the gaps beneath them. The inflated airbag dramatically increases Zach's volume, making him a much larger particle without adding weight.
So the mechanics of the snow moving actually forces him upward.
Exactly. It keeps him nearer the surface instead of being ground down to the bottom of the debris field.
That image of Zach clinging desperately to a pine tree, inflating this massive balloon while the entire world turns white and violent around him, it's intense. But it works. He survives.
He does.
But the aftermath is just total chaos.
Yeah.
Steve, the guide, is missing, presumably buried while trying to rescue the others. Shane and John, the two younger guys, are gone. Russ is badly injured with broken ribs. And Bram.
Bram is completely incompetent. This is the moment the facade doesn't just crack, it entirely shatters. He has all the most expensive gear, the best jacket, the newest, most high-tech transceiver beacon, but he has absolutely no idea how to actually use it under pressure.
This scene with the beacon really stressed me out. Can we walk through the mechanics of this? Because I think most people know avalanches involve those little electronic beacons, but the specific mistake Bram makes here is chilling.
It really is. So an avalanche transceiver has two distinct modes: send, which is transmit, and search, which is receive. When you are skiing, everyone has their device on send, emitting a constant electronic pulse.
Like a heartbeat pinging out.
Exactly. If you get buried, that pulse tells the rescuers exactly where you are. But if you survive and you are the rescuer, you have to manually switch your device to search mode to listen for the buried signals.
And Bram doesn't switch his.
He leaves it on send. So while Zach has his beacon out, desperately trying to locate the buried victims under the snow, his device keeps picking up a signal and pointing him right back to his father standing above the snow.
He is literally jamming the rescue signal. He's actively preventing his son from saving people.
He is. And for someone claiming to be an experienced backcountry skier, which Bram loudly claims to be, this is vastly worse than a rookie mistake. It implies he has never once actually practiced a rescue drill.
He bought the gear just to look the part.
Performative competence. He wanted the aesthetic of the rugged outdoorsman without doing the actual work.
And Zach has to be the one to tell him. The 12-year-old child has to instruct the adult father in the middle of a disaster zone. Dad, turn off your beacon.
And the look Bram gives him when Zach corrects him, it is not relief. It is not gratitude. It is pure, unadulterated hatred.
Because Zach exposing Bram's incompetence in front of the surviving men is a bigger sin to Bram than the avalanche itself.
That's the underself fully peeking through. Bram would honestly rather everyone die buried in the snow than be proven wrong and humiliated by his own son. It starkly shows that his priority isn't human survival, it's maintaining his image.
So they are searching this massive debris field. It is incredibly grim. They eventually find Shane. And, well, he didn't make it.
No. His neck is broken. A tragic, instantaneous death caused by the sheer blunt force trauma of the slide throwing him against trees or rocks. It's a very sobering moment that forcefully shifts the tone of the narrative from a tense adventure to a flat-out tragedy.
But then they get another signal on the beacon. They start furiously digging, assuming they found John, or maybe the guide, Steve.
And this brings us to the next massive section of our deep dive. The discovery, because what they pull out of the snow changes the entire genre of the book in one page.
They dig down and they find a body.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a man. It's a woman.
It's Ginny, Bram's administrative assistant.
Now, hold on. Rewind for a second. Ginny was not on this trip. She wasn't on the guest list. She wasn't at the trailhead. Bram explicitly told the entire group earlier that she had texted him saying she wasn't coming up to the hut.
Yet here she is, buried under 6 feet of concrete hard snow at 11,000 feet.
And the condition of her body, this directly connects back to the dead elk we discussed earlier.
It's horrific. The avalanche did not do this specific damage to her. Her stomach has been cleanly torn open, mutilated.
And her ear.
Right, an earring has been violently ripped out of her earlobe, taking a literal piece of her scalp with it. It perfectly mimics the surgical, strained violence they saw on that elk carcass on the way up.
The men immediately, almost desperately, latch onto the animal attack theory. Oh, a bear must have gotten her. A mountain lion dragged her up here.
It's a comforting lie, isn't it? An animal attack is a horrible tragedy, but it's natural. It belongs in the wilderness. It explains away the extreme mutilation without forcing any of them to look at the much darker possibility.
That a human being did this.
Exactly. It keeps the monster external, out there in the woods, not standing right next to them.
But Zach knows. Zach absolutely knows it's a lie because of one tiny, glittering little detail. Earlier in the book, when they first arrived, Zach found a diamond earring on the wooden floor inside the hut.
That's the smoking gun. If Ginny was killed by a bear and buried up on the mountain miles away from the lodge, how did her specific diamond earring get inside the locked hut?
There's only one logical, inescapable answer. She was there. She was at the hut.
Which means she arrived alive? She was inside with them, or at least before them. And then somehow she ended up dead and mutilated halfway up a dangerous peak in the middle of a blizzard.
That is not a random animal attack. That is a murder and a highly orchestrated cover-up.
But Bram is already aggressively spinning the narrative to the survivors. He's actively gaslighting the group. She must have gotten lost driving up, wandered up the wrong trail in a panic. Poor confused girl.
He's taking a brutal murder and turning it into a tragic accident that he can sell to the press later to gain sympathy.
He's rewriting reality in real time. And because he's the wealthy authority figure, and because the other men are in physical shock or severely injured, they just accept his version of events.
Except for Zach.
Zach, who is trained by his mother to look for the warning signs. Zach, who already knows deep down that his father is a pathological liar.
And this leads us to the most chilling, claustrophobic section of the book, the unmasking. They are trapped in the hut that night, and Zach decides to do some reconnaissance.
He feigns sleep. It's a classic survival tactic of the powerless child. If you are asleep, you are not a threat. You are essentially invisible to the adults.
So he lies there in the dark, and he uses his phone to record a whispered conversation between Bram and his associate, Pike. And oh boy, do we get a confession.
We do, and it is incredibly sordid. It turns out the monster stalking them isn't a Yeti, it's Pike.
Pike, the quiet associate, Ginny's ex-boyfriend.
Pike killed Ginny at the hut before the others arrived. She had rejected him, or possibly she threatened to expose some of their shady business dealings, and he just snapped. He brutally attacked her.
But the cover-up, dragging her up the mountain, that wasn't a crime of passion. That was cold, calculated logistics.
He dragged her body up the mountain slope in the middle of a raging snowstorm just to dump it. He wanted the heavy winter snowpack to hide her until the spring thaw. He obviously didn't count on a massive avalanche uncovering her body the very next day.
It's basically the telltale heart phenomenon, but with thousands of tons of snow instead of wooden floorboards.
Exactly. But here is the real kicker. Bram knows.
Bram knows.
Bram isn't shocked when Pike confesses on the tape. Bram is actually the one orchestrating the cleanup.
Why? Why would a supposedly successful CEO cover up a murder for his lackey?
Because Bram desperately needs Pike's money. On that recording, we find out Bram's entire business empire is a total fraud.
It's a Ponzi scheme.
It's a massive Ponzi scheme. He is completely broke, he is drowning in debt, and if Pike goes to prison for murder, the investor money disappears with him. So Bram decides to actively help cover up a gruesome murder simply to save his own financial skin.
And there's a specific detail here that proves how deep the financial abuse went at home, too. Zach remembers finding a receipt in his dad's office. A receipt for women's size 7 replica shoes.
Yes, the WS7 receipt.
Graham was buying cheap, knockoff designer shoes for Grace, but claiming they were expensive luxury gifts, probably siphoning the actual money elsewhere to hide his failing business. It's such a specific, insidious form of control.
It shows that his fraud wasn't just in the boardroom, it was in his marriage. But it gets even darker, if you can even believe it at this point.
I know.
On the recording, Bram starts talking about insurance, and this part honestly made my stomach drop.
Same.
Bram reveals he had taken out a massive key-person life insurance policy on his wife, Grace, Zach's mom.
He implies that her death, which Zach has fully believed was a tragic accident, a terrible house fire, wasn't an accident at all.
No. Bram calmly talks about his first wife, Serena, and their son, Abraham Jr. They also died in a tragic house fire years ago.
He drugged them. He drugged his own families and intentionally set the fires. He isn't just a white-collar fraudster. He is a literal serial killer. He repeatedly kills his families for the life insurance payouts whenever the financial walls start closing in on his schemes.
It is the ultimate, most horrifying betrayal. The person designated as the protector is actually the apex predator. He casually mentions using sleeping pills in the family water supply to ensure they didn't wake up during the fire.
And hearing that, suddenly everything clicks for Zach. He realizes why he has felt so incredibly groggy and weak this entire trip, why the whole group of survivors has been so lethargic.
Bram has been dosing their drinking water with sleeping pills all weekend to keep them pliant and manageable.
And the financial walls are closing in on Bram right now on this mountain.
Oh, really?
What does a predator like Bram do when he desperately needs a massive cash payout?
He looks for his next liquid asset.
And that asset is his own son, Zach.
On the recording, Bram explicitly refers to Zach as an obstacle. There is a large sum of money held in trust for the kids from Grace's life insurance payout. If Zach somehow dies on this trip, Bram gets sole control of that trust money.
And they're sitting in the middle of the perfect cover story. An avalanche. The devastating natural disaster. Oh, the poor grieving father lost his brave son to the unforgiving mountain.
They literally outline the plan. They plan to drag Zach out into the snow in the early morning, stage an accident to kill him, and blame it entirely on the harsh elements.
They even frame the narrative in advance, saying they'll tell the press Zach was an arrogant kid who panicked and wandered off into the storm against his father's orders. They're drafting his obituary to suit their financial needs.
And Zach is just lying there in the dark a few feet away, silently listening to his own father coldly plot his murder. He realizes the underself hasn't just come out, it has taken over completely. The mask is permanently gone. His father is the monster.
So we aggressively pivot into the escape and the climax. Zach knows he has to run, and not just to save himself, but for his little sister Bonnie, who is waiting back home.
Right, because if Bram survives this mountain and gets away with it, Bonnie is next on the chopping block. Those are the stakes. Zach isn't just running for his life. He is the only line of defense standing between his innocent sister and a man who views her merely as a delayed paycheck.
So Zach sneaks out of the hut pre-dawn. It is freezing cold, well below zero. He doesn't have all his proper gear. But before he slips out the door, he does something incredibly resourceful and smart.
The toilet paper roll note.
No.
It is absolutely brilliant tradecraft for a 12-year-old.
Walk us through exactly what he does there.
He takes the bloody diamond earring he found, the physical evidence of Ginny's presence, and he writes a detailed note identifying Pike as the murderer and Bram as the accomplice. And he hides both items inside the cardboard tube of a toilet paper roll in the freezing outhouse.
It's the perfect hiding spot. Nobody changes the toilet paper in an outhouse unless they absolutely have to. But eventually, someone will find it. It's a literal message in a bottle left for the police investigators.
It ensures that even if Zach dies of exposure on the mountain, the truth survives him. It's a profound act of defiance. He's essentially saying, you might physically kill me, but you will not control the narrative this time.
So he runs into the dark. But Bram wakes up, realizes his asset is gone, and the hunt is on.
This initiates a truly terrifying chase sequence through the deep snow. Bram tracks Zach's footprints to an abandoned miner's cabin deep in the woods.
Now, this cabin is significant, right? This is the place Zach actually visited with his mother, Grace, when she was alive. It was a sanctuary for them.
Yes. And now Bram twists it. It becomes a trap.
Bram finds him inside. But he doesn't just burst through the door and shoot him or grab him. That is way too messy. Bram is all about this staged accident.
He chillingly replicates the exact method he used to murder his wives. He blocks the cabin's chimney from the outside. He ties the heavy wooden door shut so Zach can't open it.
He tries to smoke Zach out or just quietly kill him with carbon monoxide poisoning as the fire burns inside. He wants to burn the cabin down with his son locked inside.
It is deeply poetic in a horribly twisted way, fire and ice colliding. But Zach has a weapon. He has a knife.
A heavy survival knife, right? A tool his mother explicitly gave him and taught him how to use.
Yes. He uses it to literally cut his way out of the heavy winter sleeping bag Bram had tied him into. He breaks through a small opening and escapes the cabin just as the smoke makes it an unbreathable tomb.
And this leads us directly to the final confrontation. Zach flees through the trees to a snowy clearing near an old, deep mine shaft. The locals call it the Swede's grave.
The symbolism here is so heavy and effective. The open mine shaft represents the abyss, the literal hole that Bram's bottomless greed has dug, the physical and metaphorical void.
Let's really put ourselves in this final scene. It's the Swede's grave. It's a massive vertical drop into darkness, partially obscured by overhanging snow. The symbolism is heavy, sure, but the physical reality is even heavier. Zach is physically exhausted. He's freezing. He's still partially drugged from the water. How does he even stand his ground against a grown man?
It's pure adrenaline, certainly, but it's also this moment of crystal clear cognitive processing. Bram finally catches up to him at the edge of the pit, and Bram tries one last desperate manipulation.
He tries to pivot back to the good dad persona.
Yes, he actually opens his arms, he modulates his voice and says something like, "Come here, let me help you. You're confused, son. You're sick."
Which is the ultimate, most vile gaslight. He is literally standing there with murder in his eyes.
Yeah.
And
this is exactly where Zach's character arc peaks. A day ago, even a few hours ago, Zach might have doubted his own intuition. He might have walked into that hug seeking comfort. Now he sees the mechanics of the abuse with total clarity. He sees the underself without the mask. He doesn't just yell, "Stay back." He methodically dissects Bram's entire life of lies right to his face. He lists the victims out loud. Serena, Abraham, Grace.
Strips the mask off completely.
He does, and that precise moment of exposure is what finally triggers the physical attack. Psychological literature shows that severe narcissists can handle fear, they can handle anger from their victims, they absolutely cannot handle exposure.
When Zach speaks the unvarnished truth, Bram loses his calculated control and just blindly lunges at him.
And that impulsive loss of control is exactly what kills him.
Bram lunges. He tries to grab Zach, presumably to physically throw him down the open mine shaft. But Bram loses his footing on the unstable snow crust.
The snow gives way beneath his boots, and suddenly Bram is slipping. He's hanging over the edge of the abyss, clinging to the ice, and he looks up at Zach, and he fully expects Zach to reach down and save him.
Because that is the established dynamic, right? The victim is always supposed to save the abuser. The child is conditioned to save the parent, no matter the cost.
But Zach remembers another of Grace's lessons, the hardest lesson about avalanche rescues. Sometimes the bravest thing you can possibly do is to walk away from an unsafe rescue.
And he does. He refuses to reach out his hand. He simply watches his father fall into the darkness.
It is a moment of profound, unshakable moral clarity. Reaching out to save Bram would be suicide. Not necessarily physical suicide in that exact moment, maybe, but spiritual suicide. It would mean willingly allowing the cycle of abuse to continue indefinitely.
By letting gravity take him, by letting him fall, Zach permanently breaks the cycle.
And then something incredible happens. The monster finally leaves.
Let's talk about that. This is the final lingering mystery of the book. Zach turns around and he actually sees a large creature standing in the dark tree line. The physical thing that made those clawed tracks, the thing that had been watching them the whole time. It's real.
So it wasn't a stress hallucination. It wasn't just Pike in a coat. There really was an unknown apex predator sharing the mountain with them.
There was. But Zach isn't afraid of it anymore. He looks right at it and he tells it out loud. He's gone now.
What is your read on what that means?
I think he recognizes that the real predator, the unnatural evil that was Bram, is finally gone. The creature standing in the woods is just a wild animal. It represents nature. It's dangerous, absolutely, but it's not malicious. He doesn't hunt for insurance money or ego.
I agree completely. The creature lingering there is almost an acknowledgement from the wild itself that the unnatural parasitic evil has been purged from the ecosystem.
Which brings us to our core themes. Let's fully unpack intuition as a survival skill.
Throughout the entire narrative, Grace's voice operates as Zach's internal compass. She taught him from a very young age to trust his fear. Society, and particularly his father Bram, constantly tells Zach that he's just being paranoid, that he has an overactive imagination, that he's being dramatic.
You're being dramatic is easily the gaslighter's favorite phrase.
Absolutely. It's designed to invalidate your reality. But the book forcefully validates that creeping feeling of being watched. It validates the gut instincts that screams, this person is dangerous, even if they are smiling at you.
Warning Signs makes a compelling argument that what we dismiss as paranoia is often just subconscious pattern recognition that your conscious, logical brain hasn't fully processed yet.
Yes, it is a biological survival gift. It's millions of years of evolution telling you to pay attention.
And then there's the broader theme regarding the nature of the abuser. You mentioned Lundy Bancroft earlier, who wrote, "Why does he do that?"
Yes, a seminal text on abusive men. Bram Fisher fits the psychological profile of the coercive controller to an absolute T. He is rarely completely out of control. He is highly coercive.
He manufactures chaos to maintain a grip on everyone.
He deliberately creates dangerous, unstable situations so he can seamlessly step in and be the savior. Or, conversely, so he can quietly eliminate the weak under the cover of the chaos he created. He literally views other human beings merely as assets to be liquidated or obstacles to be removed. It's his eat or be eaten philosophy taken to its horrific logical conclusion.
And ultimately, he's the one who is eaten. That is the poetic justice of nature in this story. Bram arrogantly thought he could conquer the mountain. He thought he could bully physics and weather the exact same way he bullies his wives and business partners.
But the mountain is the ultimate indifferent authority.
It swallowed his lies, it swallowed his victims, and eventually it swallowed him whole.
Zach, on the other hand, deeply respected the mountain. He actively feared it, and that healthy fear and respect is exactly what saved him. It's a respect born of love for his mother's teachings, which echoes the author's dedication at the beginning of the book.
That dedication really sets the tone. So in the end, the truth does come out. Zach survives the night. The incredibly clever note hidden in the toilet paper roll is found by investigators.
The audio recording of the confession on Russ's phone, which Zach smartly managed to preserve, survives the elements.
Bram's carefully crafted reputation is utterly destroyed posthumously. The heroic father narrative he wanted is completely dismantled by the evidence. And most importantly, little Bonnie is safe. The insurance money, the family trust, it is completely safe from Bram's greed forever.
It is an incredibly heavy story, but ultimately a deeply empowering one. It's profoundly about the strength required to survive the very people who are biologically supposed to love and protect you.
And learning the hard way that you actually have the tools to save yourself already inside you, you just have to be brave enough to trust them.
Well said.
So, to all our listeners out there, if you take away one thing from this deep dive, let it be this. Trust your gut. Think about the small inconsistencies in your own life that you might be brushing off to keep the peace. If the hair on the back of your neck stands up in a room, listen to it. Those are your warning signs. Do not ignore them.
And on a more practical note, if you are ever out there in avalanche terrain, please always double-check your beacon settings.
Seriously, make sure it's on search when it needs to be. That is it for this deep dive into warning signs by Tracy Sierra. Stay safe out there, trust your intuition, and we will catch you on the next one.